Sorry about that. Hello and welcome to Man's Model Moments. So, a little bit of a strange opening there. So tonight I'm going to be giving you a bit of an insight into how I've gone about getting the kind of dimensional pieces of our shorts flying boat, and give you a little bit of an opportunity to put in your suggestions for a name for that. So if you want to put forward a name for the shorts flying boat, so shorts is going to be the manufacturer, that is what came up for the community poll, put in name in capitals, colon, and then put the name in. So when I go through the log, I can actually see all of those, make sure I record them, because otherwise I could miss some. I don't want to miss any. And then what I'll do is collect all of those together, and I'll either, depending on how many we get, right, we'll either go through them, come up with the best ones, or put them in a draw, and then we'll do a draw on one of the live streams. And then the top 5 that we come through, so either, so we get 10 entries, and I'll go through and get the best 5 from them. We get 20 or 30 entries, I'll draw 5 out from the from those. Those will go on a community poll, and then we can select what the name of this thing will be. So how do you go about creating a mythical flying boat from an AI generated image in model form? Well, there's a couple of stages that I've kind of gone through already. Sorry, my cables here are a bit skew here. There we go. So there's a couple of ways of approaching this, and I'm going to show you a couple of tools that I've used to do that. So first of all, I just need to log into my Dropbox, which is trying to get me to sign up for a plan, which I already have. There is already, so it won't be, so Gary, it won't be a Vickers anything. So because it is a shorts, or a short, I should say, it was Short Brothers, the company, and that's the one that came through on the community poll. So it'll be a short whatever. So you can either put short, whatever the name is, or you can just put the name, because the short is kind of a little bit superfluous because we know it's going to be that. But just so that you know, so it won't be a, Armstrong Whitworth or whatever. It will be a short, which is kind of appropriate, right? Because the other manufacturers that I put in the community poll, Saunders Row did quite a lot of flying boats. Supermarine actually did a few. I don't think it would have been Supermarine either, because Supermarine and the Air Ministry, right, gave out these specifications and then gave out, awarded those specifications. And this would probably be something like R2/ I think it's 33, which was the same one for the Sunderland. There were a few other Air Ministry specifications that were issued during the 30s and through the war, which called for general purpose flying boats. There were some for 3-engined flying boats for some bizarre reason. And quite often manufacturers ignored some of those things and did what they thought was best and then put that forward to the Air Ministry. But it was the Air Ministry that actually went forward then and said, yes, we've selected this one for further development, And so I think, and a lot of the time, and this happened in Germany as well, right? They would say, no, we think you are too swamped currently with production of, insert whatever it is that they're doing. We're not going to give you this one. And I think Supermarine were probably with that, because Spitfires, were being churned out, and the Air Ministry wanted as many Spitfires as they could get. So you didn't see a lot of other Supermarine aircraft during the war. And that's one of the main reasons for it. So Saunders Roe, had expertise in building flying boats. I think the other one was Blackburn. We all know the Blackburn skewer, for instance, not a flying boat, obviously, but they had seaplane experience. And the other one I put was Westland. So Westland Hill, so they brought in a chap called Hill. They actually developed something called the pterodactyl. I think there were 4 of them, which were a series of experimental flying boats, which were due to be pretty big, I recall. But Shorts, actually, if you look at it, Short produced most of the flying boats that were actually used during and just after World War II. So I think it's appropriate this is a short aircraft. So going back to what I was just talking about in terms of the aircraft, I'm going to share my screen here. If I can do that. Share screen. And let's share. I think it's. Oh, why is it doing this new tab? Maybe. Okay. So if I go to my Dropbox, if I can type Dropbox. Obviously, the internet connection will be a little bit slow because I'm streaming at the same time. And this is file. Well, this is the aircraft. Full screen on that. So this is our flying boat. So what I actually did with this to start with, just come out of full screen, is a little bit of human interpretation to create, which you may or may not have seen. I did put it on a community post. So basically, I just went into paint.net. So paint.net is a free paint program. It's an open source program because I refuse to give Adobe money for Photoshop. Photoshop could have probably done it with AI, just removed this secondary spurious tail. But I decided that I'd just go in and edit it. And paint.net's pretty good. So edited that out, just put in the other blurred blade, so we have something that resembles a functioning flying boat that could have actually performed in reality. Even if, yes, it doesn't have a keel or a step, that was suggested that I should do that. I should put that in. But I'm not going to do that because this was what was voted for. And some of the others that weren't voted for did have those features and weren't voted for. So I want to be as faithful to the community choosing this as much as possible. So I don't want to change any elements of the actual aircraft if I can avoid it. So that is what we are looking at. Now, in terms of trying to work out how big this was. Now you can go from elements on the actual aircraft, which is useful. But there is also a set of clever tools that you can use to actually extract depth information from a 2-dimensional image. So there's a program called Zoe Depth. Let me here. Let's go to Zoe Depth. Is that the one? Let me just actually type it in, Zoe Depth. just comes up the same thing. So unfortunately with the light, I can't actually see if that is the right one. Don't think it is. So depth program online. Here we go. Oh, that's the GitHub. Maybe it's that first one. No, that's GitHub, which I just tried it before. Okay. So it was the one that I thought it wasn't to start with. So this is Zoe depth. So if you get any image, you can basically take an image, and if we take this image, drop it here, we can go image to 3D. Oh, sorry, we should have gone image to 3D to start with, and then we can drop that image there and submit that. And what that will do is it will use the image and the cues from this image to create a three-dimensional image. Now, it's not complete, it'll only do the facing pieces, but this is what it's created, and then you can download that. Now, obviously, I've already done that. So let me show you what it creates. I'll just put slightly slow action here. Just this. I'll have to download this, I think. I did actually. So I should explain. I stream from an old laptop. It's actually my girlfriend's old laptop, because it's not used for anything else, right? But it is old, right? I'm talking like it was old when I met her, which is 4 years ago now. So it is not the fastest. It does not the greatest capacity. It's fine for streaming because I use StreamYard, which is all web-based. So it's basically an interface. So when I have to do stuff like that, it is a bit clunky, let's say. Okay, it's thinking about it. While that thinks about it, let me just swap over to the chat and just have a look here. The short shot, I like that one. There have actually been some really good, which I really like. Okay. Oh, no, sorry, we lost Mike a little bit for a second there. So I'm not sure what the last part of that you heard was. So basically, what I was saying is I'm just using that Zoe Depth program to kind of give me a rough idea of the relative sizes between the front of that aircraft to the cockpit and wing root, to how long the wings are, to how deep the thing is. So given that I'm working 1/72nd scale, I thought, and given that it's a short aircraft, and actually comparing the profile of that 3D image to a real kit I have, I'm going to be using the old Airfix Short Sunderland as my donor kit, which actually fits the profile of this front area quite well. So now that you know that, I'm going to flip you down to the tabletop view, because that should be a little bit easier for us all to manage. So I've had this kit a very long time, and I'm not going to complete it as a Sunderland, principally because this used to be the only reasonably priced Sunderland that you could get. That's been superseded now, really, by the Italieri kit. It's a nice kit, actually, considering its age and time, and it's a big, substantial thing. But it is not something that I intend, with all of its, raised rivet panel detail, to get into now. But coincidentally, and maybe not coincidentally, because of course the AI works by scouring the internet for images and things. If you actually scale on a TV the image, the 3D image, sideways, and then put this profile against it, this kind of cockpit is quite similar, and the length from here to the end is almost identical. So this bit actually is going to remain almost like the key focal, like anchor point for this kit. And then from this point, this is where the extra set of windows, observer windows maybe, come in, and then it curves down, and then it has the little button nose at the end. In terms of depth, we look at how long this is. From end to end, it's about 9 centimeters. So we've got about 4.5 centimeters depth from the top of the wing, because it doesn't, so our AI image does not have this hump. The characteristic hump of the Sunderland doesn't have that, so it's going to be flat there. So from there, it's about 4.5 centimeters. So we're going to be cutting this kit across this kind of level, which if you look at the way the Sunderland comes out, it does actually sort of come out in the same way that our AI image sort of comes out to that, it bows out almost. It's quite a, bottom heavy pieces. Now the other thing you can do, and again, let me go and share my other screen. I think I just screwed that up. There we go. So coming back to this image, bigger. So again, if you angle the fuselage of the Sunderland with your viewpoint so that it's the same as this image, and you pop the tail in, you can actually work out how long this is. So basically, it's difficult to describe. But essentially, if you cut the Sunderland sort of midway here, you can then move the tail section forwards until it aligns with where this is with this perspective. Okay, so that gives you the overall length of the aircraft. So again, I have done that just as a look-see, and it's about that. It takes quite a bit off the kit. It shortens it a lot. So this is going to be a real tubby, aircraft. So that's one part of it all. Of course, using the Sunderland means I do actually get to have a cockpit. That's a bonus. And then we come to the wings. So in the AI image, add that 9.5 centimeters, or 9 centimeters, sorry, from wing root to the tip, which means our wings should be 18 centimeters long, or it was actually about maybe 1 2/3. So maybe that should be like 15. So that is quite a chunk off. It's about 6 centimeters off these wings, which is quite a considerable chunk. Of course, that doesn't include this wing root. So the main tool, or tools, I should say, I'm going to be using to start with are going to be these. We're talking the drastic measures. It's going to be razor saws. They're going to be the first starting point. So what I intend to do is to use the razor saws. Oops. Apologies for that. So I'm going to use the razor saws to get this to the more or less the right dimensions. And then I can work on, for instance, I've got to create a bottom to this, right? So I'm going to have to do that from scratch. I'm going to have to blend in all those pieces. I need to take off the hump of the Sunderland because our aircraft does not have a hump. It's very flat across the top. If you've got a profile here, it is flat until about this turret to there. So that effectively has to go, which is going to be interesting. We don't have these ports, of course, which are for the weapons racks that rolled out the Sunderland. Don't need all this glazing, so I'm going to have to get rid of the glazing that I meticulously glued in after spraying the interior here. And then, of course, the other main piece of work, other than blending the tail, actually, I don't think is going to be too much of an issue. That's going to be mainly blending. You know, I've got to cut it, shorten it, and then blend it. That's fine. And then the other main piece, I think, of work is going to be in the front end, is in converting what would be the gunner's piece into this new kind of observer's deck, let's call it, and then shaping the nose and the underside to be that strange sort of flat-fronted, little pointy-nosed arrangement that we have. So that is the task that I have. As far as the tail itself goes, I don't think there's much work to be done here. I think the tail from the from what I've seen on the image and here, is going to be exactly the same. The tail horizontal stabilizers, I think, again, are not going to change. I just need to make sure they're in a position that from the image, from the AI image, just stop that, from the AI image position, wouldn't be seen, would be hidden by the stubby old wings. Yeah, because that makes sense, right? Because it's got to have horizontal stabilizers. It's already, as an actual aircraft, going to be incredibly unstable, I think. Certainly on the water, it's going to rock around like a narrowboat. Maybe that's what it was designed for, to operate from canals. I think looking at it as well, actually, I shouldn't have stopped sharing that screen. Let me just go and share it again. Just make sure I am sharing that correctly. Yeah, okay. If you look at the engines, right? So that's the other big piece of work on this, right? Because there are two things. One is they are mounted below the wing, right? Not on the main wing spar, below. They are hung from the wing spar and then blended into the under surface of the fuselage. They also have these pieces on the bottom. Now, to my mind, and stop me if you think I'm mad here, I think that makes perfect sense if this was a search and rescue aircraft. And with the black colouring, I think maybe the little dimple nose, I think, could be the little thimble radome. I think maybe that observer deck. This could be a recovery aircraft for crew of heavy bombers, Lancasters, Halifaxes, those kinds of things. During our night raids that had to ditch in the Channel and the surrounding North Sea, this would go out. The proposal, the Air Ministry specification, would be for a medium duration, all-purpose search and rescue flying boat, equipped with some sort of rudimentary radar that could find crew ditched, and those things below the engines. You can see here the engines are mounted actually on the main plane of the wing here, so they need to they need to go and be remodeled below. But if those were droppable dinghies held below the wing, it would make sense then they would put the engines lower, so they didn't have as, if it was doing a low fly past, that they would detach more easily, at least in my mind's eye. So I think that is our chosen specialized purpose, the short, whatever it is. Now the AI did have a very close placement of these engines, which I think we might need to take a little artistic license with, or I'm going to have to let's just have a look. No, don't want to open another tab, thank you very much. Or I'm going to have to place one of the engines like further back, so you could get overlapping propeller arcs without them actually overlapping. Doesn't make any sense really from an aerodynamic point of view. And to be honest, I mean, the distance here between the main fuselage side and that first engine that you can see properly, rather than the one that is way too close to the fuselage on the left-hand side, that makes sense. In fact, if anything, it's a little far out. So I think we just go with a bit of human interpretation and leave the engines more or less where they are on the Sunderland. They just obviously need cutting off and then repositioning, and I need to form the cells then for each of the, well, the cells and these underslung, whatever they are, structures to each of them. So not much at all, really. Yeah, you see, I thought, Guy, that they could be wingtip outriggers, but I think that's a long, I mean, well, I don't know, maybe it's not. You know, it depends how deep it sits in the water, right? I suppose they could, ostensibly, have a kind of concertina kind of mechanism to put them down. Don't know. Maybe that's something I should ask you guys about. What do you think? Do you think they should be vortex on the engine could flip the boat if dropped from under the engine? Well, I was thinking there would probably be like inflatables. I don't think they could be an entire boat. Given that I have at one point done the B-17 one, which has the boat under it, and that's a big old boat. I was thinking more of just like, you know, those semi-rigid inflatables that you have, which have kind of a structure of a kind of a skeleton of a hull, and then the rest of it is all inflatable. So maybe they drop and they inflate when they hit the water, or the crew does that, or something. I don't know. Anyway, we don't need to get too much into the mechanics of how this nonsensical aircraft would work. but at least we've got some sort of, you know, structure to it. So, of course, I forgot before that 18 centimeters or so is going to be from the wing root. So it's really going to be, you know, kind of here that they get to, which then gets the question of how I actually shorten the wing. And I think I'm probably just going to cut it and reshape the tip. I think that's probably the easiest, rather than trying to sort of cut a section out and then rejoin it. I think that's probably, not sure about that one. But I think the first job is to get rid of all these windows. So let's press those out. Fortunately, I used PVA glue to attach them. So whilst providing enough force to actually keep them in, it does mean they are a lot easier to remove than if I had used any sort of polystyrene welding cement. I should be thankful for small mercies. That's our first one done. Didn't think any part of this build was going to be that quick. All right. So I wanted to try and show as many different techniques as I could during this live build, and I'll probably put it all together in much shortened form as a video, because I think it'd be quite useful for some people in terms of, you know, how do you do some scratch building stuff, you know, what other tools are there to use. Zoe Depth was a program that I wasn't aware of previously. It's quite an interesting one. I mean, obviously it has uses outside of modeling. I'm going to have to put these pieces secured in as well. I'm not sure if they go there, but I can do that all post-surgery. Remarkably, the decals on this actually still look okay, which I'm quite surprised. I mean, they are certainly no cartograph decals, but we'll see how they react when we get to that point. It also means that I don't have to use the, let's just be honest, fairly nasty transparency for that front. And I believe top turret. I don't actually. Oh yeah, there we go. There's the top turret, which is arguably worse because there is no top turret in our strange aircraft, and no armaments, at least no visible armaments, which I should be thankful for small mercies. So I think the first cuts are going to have to be from on the sides and from the top. So 4.5. I'm just eyeballing this for the main part. Get a couple of points. So I think with any project like this, I always feel the hardest part is starting, because otherwise it can seem like this big, monolithic, unsolvable thing, right? Whereas once you're started, you're committed. Right? Maybe I should be committed for this. So here we go. So here we go. Now I've got that first cut in. Yes, he's the one with slightly larger teeth. Out of the way so it's not making all that noise. Why is it always now that you find all the glasses and things which chink together? Okay, so I'm through the plastic. So this is just an ASK type razor saw. Really, really fine blade. So razor saws are one of those things that you don't use very much, but when you need them, they are absolutely invaluable. So it's a very lightweight handle as well. So I actually prefer this to my X-Acto. So this is the X-Acto. This is a much heavier blade. I have used this vanishingly small amounts, as you can tell from its general condition. I spent most of the time on the side rather than anywhere else, so you can see just starting to come through there. You see that? Hopefully, just on there. Which means, of course, we should be able to get the blade in. Yeah, there we go. only thing you have to do with a razor saw is be careful you don't do that, and don't push too hard. So let the razor saw do the work. You don't have to be pushing it massively. So one thing that can be helpful is to actually put down some double-sided tape. Tape these things down so they don't move. Because what I'm doing here, I'm having to hold it down, which is sort of squeezing this a bit, which isn't ideal. But, you know, streaming, it means that modeling is always non-ideal. Streaming is kind of the definition of non-ideal modeling. The other thing is be careful of your hands, because razor saws, as the name implies, are really, really sharp. I do have a non-slip mat. It is not in this room because I am upstairs in my study for reasons of warmth. So there we go. We are creating our split there. We're a little bit off the vertical here, but that's not really an issue because we're going to be cutting that off in a second anyway. So I've kind of scored that and I'm just putting it. It doesn't really matter, right, at this stage. If our cuts here are a little bit rough, or we score and then put it across, because all of this is going to be disposed of. I'm going to have to be doing a lot of blending on this anyway, so I'm not too concerned about that. Now the next thing is the vertical cut, and I want to cut it as close to the wing root, or the wing trailing edge, as possible. So I'm going to use this. You probably can't see it here. There is a panel line on the Sunderland here, raised rivets, that goes pretty much on that exact line. So I'm going to use that as a guide, because of course then I can use that on both sides. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want it to be as easy as possible to close this piece up. Have to not do as much blending because this obviously cuts away and goes underneath far more quickly as you get further back. So here, at least I should be, you know, once this is gone, matching profiles as closely as I can. Where are my sexy gogs? That's why I'm having difficulty. I don't have these on. Yeah, I can see what I'm doing. Oh yes, I'm not on the line at all. Let's try that again. Fortunately, I cut to the other side of the line, so it's fine. If you're going to attempt something with like this yourself, the thing to remember is things will always look like an absolute disaster till quite late in the project. So this will look like nothing on earth. It will look horrible for quite some time, you know. Also, again, if you're going to do something like this, there is a lot of cutting and sanding in your future. There we go. It's all the way through here. I think things like this are good to challenge yourself with. They do use a lot of skills that maybe we don't use an awful lot on day-to-day builds. And again, this is not our prized build, right? This is not something that, you know, if this looks like, if I can't manage this, you know, hey, well, doesn't really matter. It's not something that I'm working on for a competition, or although I do really like the idea of entering this into an IPMS competition. So we'll see how it turns out. If it turns out all right, I might consider that just for the crack. There we go. So once you got to this stage, right, it doesn't really matter. You know, there's no fear of oh, you know, what if anymore, because you've already messed it up. The worst that is going to happen has already happened. So from this point, it's all a bonus, right? So what I was talking about before about the perspective with the tail is, this is what I was meaning, is that I could start from here with the right perspective and then slide this in, obviously with the tail attached to this, until I get to that point where this looks correct with the wing coming out, it's in the right position relative to the wing, and then I can say, right, that is where I cut, join, and then go from there. Now, I will actually do that with both halves together, because obviously the tail fits into this slot. As for this piece, I'm just going to break it off. We won't be needing that. You know, even if I were to try to utilize this part of the underneath, you know, it's really very, you know, there's no way I could really get that unless it was, you know, it had some sort of keel, which it doesn't. So I don't know, we'll see. I might reutilize some of the plastic just to join things, but it doesn't need to be neat, is my point. All right. Sounds like one of Sully's models. So, the good thing about the Sunderland with all these windows is I can pretty much superimpose this over the side to get the line of where I need to cut here. Okay, I should have been using a pencil. Where did my ruler go? Okay, 9mm. And of course, better to overestimate than underestimate when you're making these cuts, because you can much more easily take more plastic away than you can add. Now I know that's about right, because before I cut just above that hole in the fuselage there. Pretty much follows that line across. So again, I'm going to start at this edge because it gives us a nice point for the saw to bite into. And with razor saws, it's important to keep cleaning out the actual teeth because they're very fine, very small, so they clog quite easily. Well, I don't know whether I'm better at it on this side than the other, or it's the plastic thinner, or I'm just getting more enthusiastic, but that seems to go a lot faster. Yeah, I'm not trying to sort all the way through there. It would be more dangerous to do that than just score and break it off. Now, in terms of these windows, what I'm going to do is just blank them off. So I could cut circles, right, and pop them in, glue them in, fill and sand them down. That'd take a long time, right? It's much easier for me to sand off this a little bit. Look, you can see actually where all the PVA was holding those windows in. Much more easier to sand that off and then just put a strip of styrene down there and then just come in with, I'll use some sprue glue, but any old filler, and then go along there. For this sort of project, I mean, I use sprue glue all the time. I don't use filler. I haven't bought filler for probably, I'd say almost 2 decades, at least a decade. I might use green stuff. Green stuff has the advantages that you can mold it with water with your fingers. It's quite good, but that's better for 3-dimensional, curves and stuff rather than flat pieces. The great advantage I find of sprue glue is it's plastic, right? It's the same styrene at the end of the day, so it's really easy to manipulate in the same way. You're not going to over sand the pieces around it because it's made of the same stuff. Now, Graham, I don't actually sell these razor saws, no, but I should. One of the problems is these actually come from a European manufacturer, and a small European manufacturer. And as soon as, I think this is CM Kits, yeah, it's a CM Kits handle. As soon as you get to smaller ones, then our exit. Let's just say our exit from the European Union was not the best for the purposes of that. In the interests of keeping politics out of this, I won't go further than that. But yes, from a business point of view, leaving the European Union was disastrous for Britain. So I'm using the same panel line to cut vertically that I did on the other side. Just keep checking that I'm on target. And I'll also be doing the same with this massive piece here. What I'll actually do here is put a blanking piece in there. I'll roughly cut a piece of plastic card and then fill that. Again, I'll show you guys this as we go along. I mean, the good thing is there is no detail. It's all very fine raised detail on the Sunderland. So we're not losing particularly much in the way of detail on the kit with this, which is another reason it's a good donor kit, if you don't feel like you're destroying something that is going to add a whole load of work that you could have avoided otherwise. Again, I'm just using that cut line to effectively score it, and then I'm just going to cut this end. Because otherwise that will tear. There we go. It was much easier than I thought that was going to be. Right. There we have it. So that's going to be the starting core of our flying boat. I imagine we're going to lose about that much from the length, so it's going to be a real pubster. Let's get the wings cut. It'd be nice to have kind of overall dimensions of this kind of nailed down. I'm going to go for, let's just have a look at that image again. Yeah, I think I'm going to go for about the 18 that I initially talked about, the twice. There's a bit of that artistic license. I think having slightly longer wings, or on the, let's see, the edge of what was suggested from our various AI tools. So that comes in at 4.4 centimeters off. Oh dear, got that bad. 4.4 centimeters Now this would of course been easier. Sorry, got the camera again. vibration. This would have been easier if the wings were in two sections, but of course I glued them when I was intending to do this in Sunderland. And I say it would have been easier. I think actually this is perhaps easier than doing it in two sections and trying to marry them up. Now, one of the advantages of doing this way is that you can then take the cut section and kind of use it as a template for the curve here. So I can kind of see what kind of reasonable curve I need to get this back to a more or less functioning wing tip. Again, pencil would be much better for this, but I don't know where I put my pencil. I was using it earlier. Yeah, that didn't really work. For this, I'm just going to cut rough sections to get the rough profile. Told you there'd be a lot of razor saw tonight's stream. Now, the nice thing about this razor saw is because of these screws, you can, and the sliding slots in these blades, you can loosen these and then you can make one edge fatter or thinner or angle the blade. I don't have a screwdriver here, so I can't do that, which is why I'm struggling a bit here. It should be easier than this, because I should be able to just angle this blade more down here so that when I'm making the cut, it goes deeper at the front. But yeah, because I'm constrained by the engines here, despite the fact that they're coming off as well, of course. I wanted to do a similar thing to this on a Heinkel HE177, the Greif, where I converted it. There was a version, because they had so many problems with the engines overheating. So for those of you who don't know, sorry, I've got it all over me. The HE177 was Germany's answer to, long-range heavy bombing. Of course, most German bombers were twin-engined, sort of medium bombers, really. The Greif was a four-engine bomber. But of course, it wasn't a four-engine bomber like the Lancaster or the Halifax. It had two cowlings, each housing two engines, paired Daimler-Benzes, which led to some horrific problems of overheating. Great idea, because obviously two fairings rather than four creates a lot less drag, much more aerodynamic, so you can get higher speed, if of course you can achieve that. And eventually they had so many problems with fires and stuff that Heinkel came up with a four separate engined version. I'm not sure if they actually made it or it was just a paper project, but I wanted to convert again an Airfix kit in that way. think it's called the HE277. So you do get to a point at this process where it's just easier to use snips. So for here, just sort of snip the profile. Now, of course, single bladed snips would be much better here. But, you know, unless you want a crocodile wing, that's still got to be melted together. And then the profile of this obviously has to be much reduced anyway. So not really an issue. Also, kind of need to split this and take that out as well. Yeah, that's a different issue we'll come to. Sort of control surfaces. Because I think what we'll do is actually use the normal control surface and just push this back. Although, would it have needed the flaps? Probably. Don't know. Anyway. There's our stubby wing. Oh, wow. That's stubby. Look at that. The short tubster. Or the short. Yeah, the other thing is that the Sunderland. Oh, let's just get rid of this because it's making too much noise. So from above, the Sunderland tapers in quite substantially at the front. Ours really doesn't, so we're going to have to sort of push it out a little bit here, and then draw it in. So I might need to remove some of this structure, if that is helping keep that form, which we don't want. So yeah, all of that can come out. A bit easier to deform that. Take it right back to the base. There we go, real kit butchery this. And we still have to deal with the hump. I think the easiest way to deal with the hump is going to be to cut this piece of the fuselage off and just reskin it. I don't think there's any other way to deal with that. But let's move our carnage to one side. The short puffin. That's quite a good one. I like that too. So we now need to pop in our tail. Okay. So I'm going to keep this on this screen whilst I look at the other screen to actually look at our little puffin, whatever it's going to be. So I need to have, so it needs to be at that angle to me. this here. Oh, I need the wing in. Fortunately, the wing actually slots in and behaves itself pretty well. I do, however, need 3 hands for this operation that I do not have. So I do, of course, have tools which could help me. They're all in other places. So, in order, right, for that angle to be like so, needs to be coming in pretty much there. Oops, slid one. Come from there. That's okay, it's about that, which I think is going to be the approximately 5 centimeters we talked about before. Yes, it is. How about that? 4.6, pretty much. Well, it's consistent. That's a good thing. So when we come off our image here, so 4.5, principally 4.6 brings us to this here. Now, raised rivets have a purpose. Marking the line. Check there. Yes. Thank you, raised rivets. To be fair, the riveting on this is actually very subtle. Now, I did consider leaving a little bit of a tab so that I could, kind of slide one in the other, but the plastic is so thick that is pointless, right? It's far easier to butt join them and then use a joining tab of Plasticard inside, which is what I will actually do, or tabs. I probably won't do a continuous one. Also, the fact that the plastic is, pretty thick is going to help us in terms of the join. I should have just called this stream the Alex saws shit up. Yeah. Now, because of the complex curve here, this is actually going to be quite difficult if I wanted to carry on. So I'm just going to, because we don't need this is all excess plastic, I'm just going to take that off. again, with this sort of thing, it's quite nice just to be brutal, you know. It's not something you generally get to do with kits. And still be creative, you know. Not talking about those occasions where frustration gets the better of us. There we go. Now, given that none of our other pieces and my imaginary version of what this aircraft does, we won't have a tail gunner. We'll probably take this down and close this off. I don't think it would be appropriate to both the nighttime and rescue role of this aircraft. Of course, the project was cancelled by the Air Ministry when they realised it was indeed a very silly aircraft. And probably after any trial, when it was seen to be abysmal in all of its characteristics, I expect, both sea and flight. I mean, there's certain science to butchery, Phil, you know? Science lessons will resume after the carnage. I should have a few videos coming out this week. I should have. How far along that I'll get remains to be seen. But I should have an update on the shop, quite a big update on the shop in a while. I've got quite a bit of stuff to show. I've got one for Outlaw Paints, which I would like to get out, but I've still got some filming to do on that one. And I have a whole bunch of ICM unboxings. ICM are doing some really nice stuff at the moment, and they have been very generous and understanding in the pace of things, because I've not been able to do an awful lot on the channel that way recently. They've been very understanding of that, so I do need to get a bunch out of them because they put a lot of trust in me for that. So I think they deserve that back. And I think what they're doing is genuinely really good. I've been building the Kozak 2, the Ukrainian MRAP, which is based on a Isuzu, I think it's a chassis, 4x4. Super kit. I mean, it's not a vehicle that I would normally have chosen, but it's a big, chunky beast, and it's got a heap of detail in it. A little midget submarine, which is ideal if you want an hour build. And a lot of aircraft, quite a few aircraft. Some more figures. I think ICM are doing actually really, really good figures, and some really welcome ones. We talked about, we decry the loss of pilots. They're doing a lot of pilots, and ground crew and stuff for dioramas. Obviously not seated pilots, but I think it's a good alternative to have you know, if you don't have a seated pilot, to have some crew around, especially, you know, for those folks who want to produce dioramas. So I've got a lot of time for ICM at the moment. I haven't yet received my Gannet, or Gannets, I should say. I have a whole bunch. The shop to fulfill pre-order stuff. I hassled Humble about them today, and they were just like, "Oh yeah, it's being picked." It's like, well, I actually had a shipping notification from them last week, and I thought, "Oh great, you know, placed the order, and they got onto it, you know, in reasonable time." And then it arrived, and it was just a bunch of marketing stuff. And I'm just like, "What the hell is this?" It's like, and the thing is, it's marketing stuff which is just like proud to stock Airfix. I'm just like, yeah, the way I'm feeling about Airfix at the moment, this isn't the right thing to send me. Something praising yourself, you know. It's like, not that Airfix aren't doing great stuff, but you know, the business side is the Hornby business side is definitely room for improvement. Anywho, that's enough of that. So, are you ready for this? Ooh, that's a tubby. That's a tubby beast. That is not a long aircraft. It's amazing what I was going to say. It's amazing what difference 4 centimeters makes, but that would be inappropriate for a podcast, I'm sure, or stream. Yeah, that is a tubby little beast. So actually, the profile here is not too bad, right? The profile difference, I should say. So obviously, it scoops in here a bit, which of course it doesn't do on the main body. So we've got a little bit here, and let me just have a look at that image again. I mean, looking at the image, it doesn't really have this keel at all. It just goes up. So that's another piece of butchery, I'm afraid, that's going to have to happen. And I might as well do it now. I'm just going to eyeball it. In fact, I'm just going to cut it. I'm not even going to razor saw this, because this is all going to be underneath what we actually create, using the royal we, of course. I think of you all as in on this build. It was your fault, after all, that I'm doing this, so you can share the blame. My stupid idea, but you made me do it. Okay. Yeah, close enough. Yeah, probably more will have to go from here. In fact, I think. Again, with this sort of thing, I think you can make some initial cuts, you know, and then you almost have to sculpt, you know, what you finally end up with. Okay. Yeah. See, because we're quite far in here, we're going to have to blend that in anyway. And again, something like milliput. So I'm going to use several different things here, right? I don't want to use the same technique. I think somebody suggested in one of the either the comments of the last stream or in one of the posts, why don't I 3D print it? It's like, well, that's kind of the easy way out, right? In one sense. In the other sense, that's digital modeling, right? I could do that. I'd have to go into a some sort of 3D program, Blender, and create a 3D model and then print it, which is a different set of skills than really I'm trying to demonstrate here. I'm kind of looking at it as AI is an interesting tool. What could we do as modelers to actualize some of those interesting ideas that it comes up with, rather than the digital modeling side of it, which is absolutely valid. It's just not really what I wanted to do in these videos. So I want to try and showcase a whole range of different modeling skills and techniques. I think techniques is probably better than skills, because when you see me applying them, you'll think there's no skill in that, as you've seen with my kit butchery thus far. But the point is, that as modelers, you can create anything, right? There's nothing stopping you but your imagination, time, and materials to do these things. And this is kind of to demonstrate that, and some of the things that you can use to do that. So I'm going to be doing a bit of scratch building using plasticard. I'm going to be doing some sculpting, and blending using putties like milliput and green stuff. I might do some 3D printing. So I might do that on the engine nacelles. That's one of the things I was thinking is, those redone engine nacelles. I may 3D print those. We'll see. We'll see how much time I want to dedicate to that. But I want to use plasticard, backing with filler, with sprue goo, and using blanking plastic, for this piece. Shaping on these pieces, thinning out areas, all that kind of stuff. To create this horrifically short and fat little stumpy flying boat. So obviously I'm going to need some internal support here. Now the cockpit will give us a little bit of that. So that fits in up here. Two little lugs it kind of sits on. I say cockpit, it really is just a floor with a couple of chairs on. It's very much the old Airfix, the kind of, I think this is a 1970s kit originally. I haven't checked scale mates, but I think it's that sort of age. A quick search would tell us. But yeah, I mean, just putting that in gives you a whole bunch more stability there. And actually we do, you can. You're not going to see an awful lot through into this anyway, especially because this doesn't have the glazing of the actual Sunderland. So I don't think we've got too much of a problem there. So even just gluing that together, I think, is going to give us a whole bunch of structural stability to allow us to kind of make other decisions based on that, because you don't want to get too deep into some of this stuff sometimes if you've still got alterations to make, because you don't know how those are going to affect the other pieces. This pretty much can be glued up, I think, is the tailpiece. And then we can make, I may actually just blank that off. And again, that could be I can show that with like milliput or green stuff, because this whole assembly essentially could be made and then mated with the fuselage. So I might actually do that. So that's quite an easy, I was going to say an easy win. And one of the reasons for that is I think on a project like this, you need to allow to give yourself quick wins, because it's a big thing, right? I mean, and this is just a bit of fun. It's just, you know, to show what you can do and to, you know, show that it's possible to recreate something that a computer has dreamt up from trudging the internet and teaching itself what flying boats look like. But if you don't get, you know, if this was a serious project and we were trying to recreate an actual, you know, prototype aircraft that was, you know, only one was ever made, or you know, never got into production, never got off, or maybe even never got off the drawing board, and you were using a donor aircraft, if you're doing this seriously, it can be quite daunting. And I think if you're not giving yourself a reason to carry on, you know, that feeling of achievement, it can get too much, right? So let's go ahead and actually glue this up. And the good thing about our little shorts stubby boat, and yes, I am using quite a lot of adhesive here because this is quite a, as I mentioned before, quite a thick fuselage. I want it to actually get down into there, and actually have a little bit more time bonding, because otherwise it'll evaporate before it's really got into those pieces. And I think also leaving this gives us a bit more structural stability. But yeah, I think giving yourself a feeling that you are getting somewhere rather than just looking at a pile of plastic, you know, that you've butchered and thinking, I've just screwed up a kit here that I can't go back from. I don't really have the mojo to carry on with it. I think if you're actually doing bits and you can start to see your vision coming together, that's a massive psychological boost, right? It's a massive part of it. Because at the end of the day, you know, I think all of us get a buzz out of making stuff. And if you're not actually making something, I think that can get quite wearing. Now, the thing I'm going to be careful about with the tail is that it actually goes on straight. And it is not very straight. So, and that's because these halves are not quite aligned at the bottom, which is quite a common thing with old kits, right? They didn't have CAD. It was all designed using numbers and slide rules and technical drawing skills and all those things, where little errors creep in and the engineering wasn't as good on the kits, and, you know, precision of putting the parts together, where you're locating tabs and everything. I mean, I'm literally shaving off, what, 0.2 of a millimeter here, but that is going to make the difference between this part being straight and being cockeyed. Yep. Let's put some glue in there. Again, you see I'm using cement not quite in the way that Tamiya Extra Thin was intended. That's because I do want it to get right down across that tie join, give me a bit of extra working time, so I can ensure, one, that I'm getting a strong bond, and two, that I can actually get this lined straight. Or as straight as I can. Which I think, that doesn't look too bad. looking good. It's funny because if you put it certain ways, it looks really cockeyed, but it's just because the way the webcam works. Yeah. Okay. So just a comparison of the wing. It's funny how it changes, just cutting that section off the end, how much it changes the entire look of it. And, you know, I mean, we have shortened the wing considerably, but let's see, what's for 40 centimeters, so 4 centimeters times 72. Okay, we're taking about 3 meters off the wing, so you know it's not inconsiderable what we've done. But you know, considering the wing is still, well, actually we've got a bit on the there as well. It's still 18 centimeters of wing. Yeah, about 13 meters. You know, which isn't small. It's just small for this. The other thing I might do, given time and inclination, is there's a program, some of you may know of it, called Flyout. This is a fairly new game. It's just come out of early access on Steam, and it is it's primarily for aircraft, but it is a design software. It's a game, obviously, but you can design aircraft, and it's designed to be very accurate. So it's accurate in terms of its physics, and so you can build an aircraft. You can choose its power plants, its stealth characteristics if you're doing a modern one, compression ratio of its engines, all this sort of stuff, with how many pilots and how much fuel, and blah 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 blah. So I could actually create this thing on Flyout and see how it would have actually flown. Well, one, would it have flown? Because believe me, it's not that easy to. Who would have thought that aircraft design was difficult, right? But apparently it is. You have to be some sort of expert or something. But yeah, I think that might be quite an interesting, or at least amusing, thing to do as well. I'm just cutting into these pieces for the control surfaces on the wings so that I can actually bring the cord of this in. I think I might need to do that quite a bit more. But this is all crude stuff, right? I'm doing now. This is all just to get the basic skeleton of what we're going to be working with. Just look at the state of the kit there. Look at the sink mark on that. You see that? It's there. How well that's coming out on cam. Well, it's not because I'm showing you the wrong piece. I'm showing you the wrong end. But just here, you see there's a horrific sink mark in that wing root. And it's not the only one either. There's one here. There's one here. Yeah. Airfix have come a long way, as have other manufacturers as well. I mean, technology of everything has moved on a lot. Now, of course, I do have to remove these engines from here as well. What I'm going to try and do, though, is actually cut them diagonally across here. Well, let's just see if I can do that. And of course, again, this would have been easier were they not already glued together. But then other elements here would have been harder, so kind of a swings and roundabout situation, I feel. And again, for all of this, I am unconcerned about surface finish, right? Because the whole thing, I can assure you, is going to be completely sanded by the time we get to the end. So, you know, we're not saving ourselves any work by trying to preserve anything. Everything is going to have to be stripped back and started afresh. So, yeah, that's a thing. The great thing about a razor saw is it allows you to get really shallow edge on here. See here, I'm cutting into the plastic here at almost the same angle as the cord of the wing. So yeah, the fact that I cut slightly into the wing there, not really an issue. I'm going to have to use kind of a plasticard base here, you know, underneath to sort of cement all this back and then reskin the wing, which I'll probably just do with sprue glue. So I'm not going to be too precious about any of this. So whilst not being precious, I am also trying to avoid making extra work for myself because there's going to be enough work anyway. So hence, if I can, you know, cut as close to this line as possible, you know, and not having to then go back and take more off, or minimize the amount I'm actually having to add in. And at the end of the day, it's all going to be a personal choice on where you want to do the work, right? But the short takeaway is it's still going to be work. It's just where you want to put that. Yeah. You can see that though has pretty much separated from there. I'm going to try and get it as close to the, oh, I split the wing there. Glue joint wasn't very good. Ideally, I'd like to get one of these engines off before the end of the frame. So you need to be careful with razor saws. They are sharp. I didn't even feel myself doing it. Yeah, so that's the other thing I think on the project like this, you will injure yourself. No matter how careful you are inevitably going to cut yourself or snag yourself on a razor saw or something before the project is over for sure. You obviously want to try and minimize that possibility. And if you do have an injury, make it as small as possible. But you are likely to lose some red blood cells at least. Especially if you're rushing, which is what I'm doing now to try and get this this off before I need to finish. There! Hallelujah! So there is our engine, our wing. And you can see we haven't actually damaged the wing too much, outside of the engine, of course, itself. So this is not going to be too hard at all to patch up. You know, to put a piece of plastic card in here and then go over that and make that smooth. And then we can work out exactly how we want this. I think from the picture it's going to be something like that. Maybe a little bit lower. Yeah. But I think that is for another time. Once I've got all of them out. We're just done. So I think that's probably a good time to call it. We're coming up to 2 hours. There are 3 more engines to cut out. I've got to cut off the other end of this. But that is then all of the major surgery work done on the donor Sunderland kit. And next time I return to this, we can look at actually building and actually, okay, we've deconstructed now down to our foundation. How do we then build that up? How do we start to, you know, patch some of this to make it look more like what we've got in that picture and put it together? And then I think going on from that, it is, you know, how do we create some of those scratch built areas? You know, this front observation, let's call it an observation or observer's window area. I think we need to look at that, and obviously that coming down into the strange little button nose, and probably most, you know, the biggest scratch building task of all is going to be creating that curved and flat bottom. But that is all for tonight on Butchery with Alex. Thank you all for turning up tonight and watching me hack relentlessly at an old Airfix kit. That's very much appreciated. Let's try and get some form of light here. I'm now going to get rid of all of this sawdust and wash my hands and clean this desk up. I will remove these other parts that I just mentioned, these engines, the tip of this wing, so that next time it is just building rather than watching me hack away at this. And then I can look at, you know, what techniques I'm going to use where, and actually building this up. You know, we did build something. We did get the tail section with that rudder or tail fin assembly built, but I didn't do it all And that's because I know that I can get a couple more quick wins in putting, you know, these tail sections and stuff on, the horizontal stabilizers and the flapper-on assemblies, which, you know, especially it's nice to have those kind of in reserve, so that when you just get to that point where you just feel, I'm not sure I can carry on with this, you can just quickly go back and do a couple of those bits and feel like you're winning. I think it's important, something like this, that you feel that you're winning the battle to create what you're, you know, what's in your mind or what's on the digital screen in front of you into this little, you know, physical project. Because I think it's quite rewarding. You know, I think it's a really rewarding part of our hobby is, you know, I get that buzz from making any kit, but something that nobody else has, you know, whether that be a diorama or like this, a unique aircraft. I think, you know, nobody else in the world will have one of these shorts, whatever it comes out to be. Unless you go ahead and decide to butcher a Sunrun kit in the way that I have. If you are that mad, then you too could have one of these. The other thing, what I might do once it's all finished, is actually, I've got a 3D scanner. I might scan it and create a 3D model that people could actually have. That might be quite a funny little thing to do. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me tonight and spending a Tuesday evening watching me do that. I hope it was entertaining, if not useful. And hopefully the next couple of sessions will be a bit more useful when we actually get onto some of those building pieces rather than butchery. So thanks so much for joining me. Have a great evening and see you next time. Bye now.